all illness begins with stagnation. And I'll use water as the example. Would you rather drink your water from a vibrant, flowing river or from a stagnant puddle that stinks? I think it's obvious.
Welcome to the Movement and Performance Podcast, where it is my goal to help people get active, connect with their body, and perform better. Today I have a special Father's Day episode where I'm bringing on the OG himself, my father, Thomas Carrano. Many of my episodes are dedicated to wisdom that can be found in academia. However, in this episode, we're going to dedicate it to the wisdom that can be found in lived experiences. It's going to be a reminder to take action. My father and I both believe in balance in life. However, this episode will be a reminder not to overanalyze too much and to do more. My father's known for saying the world is your school and life is your lesson. We were all born into this world without knowing the answers, and we have to figure it out along the way. We get into the arena, we make mistakes, we fall, we get back up, we learn from it all. The lived experiences provide education. Having a little bit of grit and courage to get into the arena is also important. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Do you think that in today's world, people think too much and they should do more? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, well, I'm not against like analyzing and research and science and all that. But at what form is it at what point is it a form of procrastination? You know, if you're spending all day thinking about it and talking about it and you're not doing anything about it, what's going on here?
Right. Like, I think that when you think about something, right? If I'm setting a goal or whatever it is, or I'm planning for that goal, the whole planning phase is for the action. And if you never take the action, what's the point? It's like, even if you're a martial artist, all right, so we're gonna sit and we're gonna strategize, we're gonna plan, but then at some point you gotta get in the ring and do it. Like, if you're always sitting and planning, at what point are you ever actually going and doing the thing that you're planning for? I kind of feel like.
Yes, absolutely. So I'd say, teaching martial arts through the years, that there's kind of two type of learners. Someone that wants to kind of understand every single aspect and every rule of the game before they go in, and others just want to go and we'll figure it out later. I think I'm more the kind of let's go and talk about it later kind of guy, It's kind of the way we grew up, you went outside, everybody's playing, you see someone playing a game, whether you know the rules or not, asked to jump in, get choosed in, you're in the game, and you kind of figure it out as you go along. Same thing with fighting, You could plan till the cows come home, but, like Tyson said, everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the face.
Right.
So some people like to go get punched in the face first and figure it out. And like I said, others want to spend all day planning, looking for that perfect plan. But part of that perfection is failing, going back to the drawing board. And also success.
Right.
You're in a game, you're finding some success. So that works, you make it part of your repertoire, whatever it is. It don't just have to be fighting and sports, it could be anything.
Right. What's interesting is I did an episode on advanced bodybuilding principles, so if you really want to nerd out on it. But they say the advanced principles, the differences between just doing any regular routine, doing anything to like a general, 3 sets of 10 routine, or something super advanced, the differences are extremely tiny. So it's like we're picking they were picking the fly shit out of the pepper type of thing.
So just going out there and do 10 reps.
3 sets of 10?
3 sets of 10 to the point of exhaustion. To the highest levels of science.
And even the advanced stuff, drop sets, super set, like whatever advanced principle you want to think about and apply, I don't know the exact number, but the differences are so small, especially for someone who's untrained. You could literally almost do anything in the beginning.
Right.
But yeah, like that, it's the idea of picking the fly shit out the pepper type of thing. right? Like you spend all day trying to get this extremely, extremely, extremely perfect, and it really don't matter that much. Like it matters actually for the elite bodybuilding athlete who's going on stage to perform, and you're comparing the difference between the best in the world and the second best in the world. But like for the average population, you could almost do anything, and then, you know, and you'll see gains. And then your typical 3 sets of 10 type of routine is not going to be, you know, really any different than doing drop sets or any fancy thing you think you could do. So.
No, I totally agree. Like, and then think about all the time you spent talking about it and planning about it. That's time you could have been doing a set of 10.
Right, right.
You know?
Right.
There's no better time to start than right now.
Right.
So even if I doing my 3 sets of 10, whatever exercise it is, I started some progress, and then you could start reading a little bit about it.
Right.
But if you're going to put off till you know everything, when are you going to start this game? You
Right,
know?
right. And then I thought about a little bit the movie Rocky 4, you know, Rocky and Drago. You know, Rocky has like that routine where he's up in like, you know, upstate, and he's doing like farm stuff, and he's doing whatever, and then Drago's doing the advanced technical stuff. And, you know, there's something to be said about that. Like, you know, you really don't need much. You could get things from life or whatever it is, but, you know, there's 2 points really to be made there. But the one big one is Drago was super technical, and Rocky was just like grinding super hard. And I know it's just a movie, but there's still, I think, value in that idea of the grind versus being too technical.
Absolutely. So there we're talking about the grit, right? It's like maybe they both had grit, but at what point are you just being like a prima donna?
Right,
you know?
right.
It's like you don't need all this fancy stuff. That's I'll bring a lot of things back to the martial arts when I talk, but that's what I like about the martial arts. No matter where I am, I can do it. Calisthenics, counter, form, punches, hit a bag, you don't have a bag, punch the air, drop down, do push-ups, sit-ups. You could start right now, no excuses. You don't need all this technical science, get back, you know, measure my heart rate, how much muscle cells were moving at that particular second, and you know, that's great. Like you said, if you've reached your peak performance and you can't get anything else out of it, now you're reaching for these deeper inner sciences to get you there. But in the meantime, drop and give me 10.
Yeah. In the meantime, drop and give me, a little grit and a little grind in the beginning.
And the will.
Yeah.
Where's the will? That's the other thing too. You know, where's the will?
Right.
That's half of it right there. You have to have the will, something to drive you. And it kind of complements each other, because the more you work, the more you'll build those receptors to work more.
Right.
And work out more. And, you know, the more you sit on the couch, the more you're going to build the sit on the couch receptors.
Right. Yeah. What do you think would help to give somebody that desire to get out and grind if they don't have it? What do you think might be able to help?
That's a good one. You know, you just got to, you know, stop fucking around.
I love that answer. Stop fucking around and do it.
I'll give you the PG version, but, you know, stop playing around. Stop making excuses.
Right.
Just get up and go for a walk. Walk around the block once.
Right.
Right? Walk down the road and back once. Take 5 minutes.
Right.
Do that every day, a certain set time. And, you know, my 30-second push-up challenge. It's not a push-up challenge. I think I put it on the website. It's 30-second push-up drill. Mm-hmm. Tom Carrano, Hodokan Dojo.
Right.
So, you know, I might have to scroll through a few of those guys on steroids telling you, like, you know, work out for 30 seconds and you'll be built by them. But I mentioned that not to let it discourage you. You know, like, not everybody has to be all jacked up and all that to be fit. So it was during COVID, and I put it out there for the students that were studying the martial arts, and just click on and follow that for 30 seconds.
Right.
It's a start, 30 seconds.
Right.
Do that once a day, and then for a week, and then 2 30-second sessions, you know, and you just have to start somewhere. Pick something and do it.
Yeah, you actually mentioned two big things, I think. One, even the idea of starting small, right? So the idea of you don't have to get after it so big. Start small, start with what you can actually do. Even as you said, 5 minutes, walk outside your house and walk back home, whatever. Start wherever you are. And two, being surrounded by someone who is motivational. So
Absolutely.
you put on the video, you're there with someone who's telling you stop fucking around. There's tons of science to show that your environment is going to impact you 100%. So whether you're with that person and, you know, someone who's motivating you, and there's many ways to be motivated. Maybe someone's yelling at you is more motivating. Maybe being encouraging and saying, hey, we could do this together. Whatever, but just someone who already is motivated and being around them or putting on their video or whatever.
Right. I guess now you're touching on two different things that I'd probably talk about.
Right.
Having someone that's going to motivate you, that's up here. So like my friend Billy, he's like as strong as could be. He lifts weights all the time, you know. And I went to the gym with him. I hadn't did weights for a while. And I tried to follow him on the routine. I couldn't like move my arms for like 5 days, you know?
Right.
So that could be discouraging in some
Right.
ways. Or like you take someone skiing or snowboarding.
Right.
It's their first time. You bring them to that level, you scared the hell out of them. And now, you know, they're not doing it.
Right.
So I like what you said, taking little bites in the beginning. Start somewhere with something you can handle. Mm-hmm. Not all those motivators or mentors are equipped to kind of take you through those steps.
Right.
It's one of the reasons why I say join a team, join a club, join a dojo. You have someone there with experience to motivate you, to hold you accountable. A partner. Come on, this is what we're doing today. You're going out for that 5-minute walk. Have a partner to do it with.
Do you think that people should lift weights? Or do you think people should...
100%.
Yeah.
I like weights, you
Yeah.
know? I just don't find them as exciting as other things I do. So, you know, especially as you get a little older, you want to keep that bone density. Weight resistance is good. I've always done some kind of weights, but, you know, it depends. Are you doing it for bodybuilding? Are you doing it for health? Are you doing it
Yeah.
for strength?
There's different kinds of, you know, you're still doing a form of resistance training in the martial arts, you know, but the idea of maybe going to the gym and doing an actual weight lifting routine. I remember when I would lift weights, there were times you'd talk a lot of smack and say, you know, you lift all that shit, but you can't lift a bag, you know, to clean the yard or something like that. But I think there's truth to that. There's the idea of like, you know, I think you said in your thing, the person who'll, you know, take the elevator to then walk on the treadmill.
That's exactly where I was going to go, you know?
Right.
It's like, I don't know if it's a generational thing or just, you know, some people are wired different, but like I got in my car, I drove to the parking lot to the gym, I took the elevator to the 12th floor
Right.
to do the Stairmaster. I mean, to me, there's some kind of like logic that's missing, but you know, to me, efficiency ties into that. And
making things
yeah.
a way of life, you know, like I can, you know, it's not always feasible for everybody, but can you ride your bicycle to work? Can you walk?
Right.
Can you, do your own laundry every now and then? I think, you know, like you're not too good to, you know, we're always trying to find an excuse to not do work, which is literally how we're programmed, because your body wants to preserve energy, right? Don't waste energy in any way. But we've got to a point where we're so good at it that we could literally sit on a couch and never use any energy at all, you know, but so we got to get to a point where it's like, no, like do your laundry, clean your backyard, do your landscaping, do those things that are just a part of life that get you moving as well is super important, I think, for health and wellness.
so my dad was a hands-on guy, you know,
Right.
super to the building. So we were fixing stairs, fixing doors, you know.
Right.
Most of his jobs that he did, I went with him. You learn how to do hands-on stuff. So, and you get an exercise, you know. He had strong arms and strong hands because of what he was doing, not because he was going to the gym.
Right. All those I mean, you would know plumbers, construction workers, all those guys got
bagels.
hands, no?
Rolling bagels.
Rolling bagels,
Yeah.
but they all got a strong
Oh, yeah.
grip. I mean, they say nowadays there's tons of research to support grip strength and longevity. So like,
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. If you
We
are,
could make a couple good jokes out of this.
yeah, but yeah, no, that actually, it's more of a sign that probably you're living a life where you're active. You know, like you said, just throughout your life, whether you're doing the bagels, whether you're doing the laundry, whether you're doing the landscape, whether you're doing all those things, it's probably a sign that you're, you know, moving frequently throughout your day. I mean, there's probably other things to it, but grip strength is tied to like all-cause mortality, longevity, all of those things.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
See, I learned something here today.
Yeah. I guess this is probably a perfect time to drift into the 80s, right? So growing up in the 80s compared to today. I know the other day you saw like a bunch of people on their cell phone outside, like walking around, whatever, and just, you know, I even see it myself. I was just saying, walking down 3rd Avenue, I remember when I was growing up, and, you know, I'm maybe the phase-out generation, and yours was like the really wild one, but you'd walk down 3rd Avenue in Brooklyn, and there were always people out, or in the bar, or hanging out in the street, whatever, doing things, people on the corner. I don't remember the last time I saw a group of people hanging out on the corner, for better or worse, but meaning people were outside and doing things, and I see differences. But are there any big differences that you see from yourself growing up in the 80s and in the neighborhood where you were in versus kids today?
Well, where do you want to start?
Right,
You know?
right. I guess starting with physically, or wherever you want.
Well, when we woke up in the morning, you look to get out the house or your apartment as quick as you can.
Right,
You went outside, no cell phone.
right.
Lucky if you had a phone in your house, right? But you go downstairs, you start ringing your friends' bells. Ask them to come on out. There'd be 20 boys and 20 girls out on the block playing games, kings, handball, off the wall, buck, you know, manhunt. Every single day it was active things. It was like first time, you know, the kids are like, oh, what are you playing? We're playing manhunt. What is it? You run and go hide. All right, you run and go hide. Somebody grabs you and they're like, manhunt, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, change. You know, I didn't read the rule book.
Right.
You just got out and you started playing. And whatever it was, you know, kings, you got over there, you tried to do what everyone else was doing, and you got out and you got to the back of the line and you worked your way back up again. You kind of figured out like that. But, you know, that's how we communicated. You were out doing it in the streets. Every season, if it was basketball season, you go to the park, you play basketball. Hockey season, you're playing hockey. And you talk about
Baseball in the street,
baseball, stickball in
Mm-hmm.
the street alongside the movie theater on the wall.
Right.
And, you know, that's how it was.
Fights?
Fights. But it was also different. It wasn't like a fight forever.
Right.
It's like you're playing handball. It's like I said it was in. I said it was out. Oh, yeah, I call you out. We'd slug it out and then go back and finish the game, the handball. You know?
Right.
I mean, sometimes we'd put on the gloves. Once we discovered gloves, we'd have a difference. You'd be like, sometimes we'd be just calling each other out because I thought you were the guy I could beat, or you'd be the challenge for me, like my
Right.
equal, my, you know.
Right. That's funny.
Yeah, my competitor. And it was all the time. The games were rough, but also, you know, you weren't really like holding a grudge. You fought, you got knocked down, you got back up.
Yeah, you compare that to, some people forget.
Rough and tough, you know.
I think that, you know, we think of like, that's kids being rough or being whatever, but not realizing that there's a lot of lessons that come from that playful experience. So like, kids today, I think, are so socially awkward because we don't realize one of the best. So play, you see that animals in nature play, and they play for a reason because it's a part of survival, but it's also a part of a learning experience. You're learning social emotional things, and you're wiring your brain, whether, you know, you always say like kids today can't even look at you in the eyes. Like whether you're looking someone in the eyes, you're learning what you can get away with, what you can't. You're learning where you can test things, you're strategizing, you're And even though you're doing it in a playful way, you're preserving the areas of the brain that if you need to do it in a serious way, where I need to know maybe at work, can I test this person? Can I not? Can I push this boundary? Can I not? Can I actually look at someone and hold a good posture and not be afraid? There's all these, can I strategize and think about, wow, this person's coming after me, but now I have to figure out a way to get away from them, but still survive, or, manhunt, literally manhunt. I mean, some jobs today are literally manhunt. People are coming after you because they want to take your place or whatever it is. And so even though you're doing it in this playful way, oh, I'm hiding, I'm whatever, you're actually wiring your brain to think outside of the box, to handle stress, to look people in the eyes, to do all these different things. And so like kids in the 80s are naturally doing that. And now you probably have a bit more social intelligence, potentially, it'd be a good study to do, compared to, some of the kids today, they can't even look at you in the eyes or have a
Well, that's one thing I noticed. You're teaching martial arts and parents bring a child in and they're like, want to build his confidence or whatever it may be. And I noticed that, like a lot of kids can't even look you in the eye. And some of it, I think, is due to technology and their lack of socialization, like, like from the 80s, you're saying. But also, you got to understand, a lot of these poor kids went through like the whole pandemic thing. It's like wearing a mask, not socializing, probably during key elements of their growth, right? So I don't know, how do we make up for that? You have to get out there, Yeah,
recess in schools. I honestly think that's every kid at every grade level, even high school, should have recess every day.
Oh my goodness, opinion. Elementary school, we used to play a game. You took off like the wool hat. We used to throw it up in the air. Whoever grabbed it ran. The whole schoolyard chased you till they caught you. And then you took it and threw it up, and the game continued.
Right.
I don't think I missed school for 2 years because I didn't want to miss catch the hat.
Right.
I'm serious,
Catch the hat. Yeah.
It's like, I think it's just as important as
to
underplay what you're learning in the classroom, but I think it's just important.
Yeah, I believe that the classroom stuff is important, but that we don't realize how important those. We just think play is, but not realizing how play is, benefiting you in all these other ways.
Absolutely. I think we've we've put so much pressure on the kids today to make, whether it's certain test grades and scores and to be successful academically. And, they've raised the bar.
Right.
As you get more kids studying more hours and going to extra training classes in between their regular school classes, they've raised the bar of these numbers that everyone's shooting for, which is taken away from the time to do these other things. Like you might say, it's playing, but no, it's more than that. It's social and emotional development. And it's all about the balance. You have to find that balance.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's missing today. And
one of the biggest things I'd say, even part of probably why I'm partially a phys ed teacher, not just because of dojo and martial arts, but I think you exposed me to about 1,000 different, whether it's skateboarding, snowboarding, handball, whatever. Like
we did it all as kids.
Right.
And that's the other thing, though, even sports. So, everyone has their aspirations to be in the NHL, the NFL, the NBA, and I get it. Why wouldn't you? Look at these high salaries. It seems like, something to motivate for. But that's another thing. The stakes have been raised so high that you don't have time for anything else. I think you actually taught me this lesson when you were a kid and we were competing in the AAU karate championships. You start at the metropolitan level, you do good. You practiced real hard to be successful at the local level. Then you qualified to go to the regional level. From the regional level, we qualified to go to the national level. And by that time, you have no life, you have to do good at the nationals. And then you do good at the nationals, and now you're qualified for the Junior Olympics. Eventually, it's like you lose your identity. At what point is that That's all you're doing to
Right.
be successful and on top of that game. Whereas when we were kids, whether it was out of being naive or not, we were just out there doing it,
Right.
You play from when you get up to when you go to bed. I mean, your parents are yelling out the windows to come in for lunch. Nowadays, you take the kid out in the pool and they're like, can I go in now?
Right. Yeah, I think a big thing is also the difference between performance and health that people get confused too. Like everybody now is trying to compete to be the best in something. But I don't think you need to do that in all areas of your life. So now we often look to some of these other, we're going to look to the athlete for wisdom, but the athlete really isn't giving me the wisdom that I need because he is an athlete trying to be an expert in one thing. And for health, you need to be kind of like a jack of all trades kind of person. You can't be, I give the analogy of like a baseball pitcher. They're on the brink of being the absolute best pitcher in the world and blowing out their shoulder. And they're probably doing it at a cost to other areas of their life. They don't get to hang out with their friends. They don't get to have a beer on the weekend. They don't get to do it. Like there's all these other sacrifices that are made. And that's fine. Some things are worth it. But performance and health are two different things. And if you want to be healthy, you have to incorporate. You can't spend all day just studying in the books. There has to be a moment when you let go of that, where you have stress relief, where you play, and those things aren't, again, like these people who are competing to be the best, they're maybe genetically gifted in something. So now what point are you
point as well, right?
Pushing yourself to be something you're not? That you can't even get to that level, even no matter how hard you gave it, not to push, not to say working hard isn't worth it, but just the idea of like you couldn't even get to that level no matter how hard you worked. So you're kind of
right.
You're gonna.
No,
Yeah.
I used to love basketball as a kid.
Right.
When I stopped growing and it started just becoming,
Right.
jumping up, and there comes a point where you realize I'm not going to the NBA, right?
Right. But now, what I would say is people don't realize though, now that means like, okay, I'm not good in sports, so I'm not going to participate in sports, but that's not it. Because sports is still good for your general health.
You don't have to be the best to
Right.
enjoy a sport. I mean, that's now you're letting that competitiveness that could drive you to become better actually hold you back from doing anything. What good is that,
Right. But yeah, you're reaping the benefits of activity, regardless of how well you perform. And the idea of people moving more for just general health, I think is important. And that idea of not focusing too much on academics to the point where you're now setting the bar so high, like giving opportunity for kids to be out there, play, do those things, I think is valuable. So.
Yeah, I mean, you can use for an example, I'll take hockey in this instance, right? If I want to become better at my hockey and I want to go out there and do 200 shots on the net every day, and I'm out there by myself, I set a schedule, this is what I'm going to do, is different than just me and some kids go out and play all day. Like if I'm saying, I'm going to do 100 shots every day, I mean, if there's some motivation behind that, I could see it, exciting you.
Mm-hmm.
But how long does that last? Well, you could take that same kid and just put him out with his friends and they'll shoot for 3 hours. Where like my 100 shots, I could be done in 20 minutes. And it's like, all right, I did my 100, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just playing and having fun, so sometimes I think maybe that's what I would say is the difference from like when I grew up. And it might not just have only been the 80s. It could have also been like geographical,
Mm-hmm.
financial, different places that put you in a different field. But for me and the kids growing up in the neighborhood, like I said, we were never counting how many we were doing to get better. We were just doing it. It's like from when we woke up to when we went to bed.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like I remember you recently saying, as we start to drift into some of the life lesson pieces, but don't wait to retirement to enjoy life too, right? While we're on the combo of play,
Like I said, I'll be referring back to a lot of martial art buddies. So my sparring partner, Billy No Control, right?
Right.
No Control Billy.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm talking to him on the phone one day, and he says, well, I said, oh, you're going to do that now? And we kind of like talking about retirement stuff, and he's like, how many summers you think I got left?
Right.
You know? There comes a point where you realize, like, now's the time to do something. You know? I kind of realize that with other things in life, too. It's like, at what point can you be the strongest you can be, the fastest you can be, the best fit you can be? There's windows of opportunities for things. And you kind of have to strike when the iron's hot, you know? It's...
Right.
You can't always wait, especially like, I'm going to wait till I retire. The time you retire, you might be too old to do something. You know,
Right.
I'm going to wait till the cows come home. Here we are again with that,
Right.
you know. Is it a form of procrastination? You just got to start.
Right. You just got to go. And even if that's applying though to the hustle, but it's also applying to the lived experiences, the play piece, right? Like you got to go the vacation that you keep putting off, whatever. Like Roxanne says, she's got some flights for us, right? To go, to just go, whatever. And you did go. You went to, where did you guys go? Croatia, or what was it? No.
We bounced around a little bit over there from town
Italy,
to town.
between Italy and Africa. What was that spot? I can't even remember.
Oh, Malta?
Malta. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I like to say is the world is your school,
Yeah.
life is your lesson, right? So it touches on a lot of things. Like, Tony Robbins has these 2 questions at night that you should ask yourself before you go to bed. You know, what did I contribute today, and what did I learn? You know, so every day, whether something good happened, whether something bad happened, whether you're faced with challenges, every day gives you an opportunity of a lesson. So sometimes we're looking for school, we're looking for, a mentor, we're looking for some type of, education system to teach us something. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not downplaying that at all, but at some point, every day is a lesson. Your life is the lesson. What are you getting out of this?
Yeah, I love that. There was, as we shift into the section of life experiences, do I remember right that there was a fan story that you had where you took this old crap fan or whatever, even though it's funny, and I don't know, but I feel like there's something symbolic there along the lines of not taking things for granted, and do I have this story right, or you want to share it? Was there something with it?
I like to rebuild things.
Right.
I like to recycle. I don't like to waste.
Right.
I like the saying, take what you eat what you take, type of stuff. And so you're probably talking about the fan. All right, I found it in the garbage.
Right.
And, wasn't working. I took it apart, fixed it, cleaned it. By the time I was done, it was brand new. Let's see, that's when I lived in Brooklyn, probably about 20 years ago. I still got that fan.
Wow.
And it's more than that too. I was with my cousin Vincent, and there's also quality time together.
Right.
So I says, I got to take that fan and see if it works. He's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, that's a nice looking turbo fan, He's like, all right. Next thing, I'm taking it apart, I'm working on it. And he was just fascinated, but in the meantime, it's quality time together too. Sometimes when I'm fixing something, we're sharing an experience, we're sharing knowledge, challenging your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm that kind of guy.
No, I think there's, there's some good symbolic lessons in there, even though it might seem like a funny story. But another good lesson I feel like I always got from you, and again, correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm misinterpreted at times, but saying even down to cleaning the toilet bowl, and right, you think the job that maybe socially isn't as, you compare cleaning the toilet bowl to a doctor or whatever. Like, it's not as prestigious. But I feel like you've always said you can bring meaning to anything you do when you bring your meaning to it. You can take something and bring it to a whole nother level, even down to just cleaning a toilet bowl. That there was some good lessons with that.
Okay, that ties into probably a couple different things there.
Yeah.
So, again, my dad, like, he did so many different things, and when I'd ask him, whatever, he's building cabinets, him and his partner built a boat, and I was like, oh, you guys, what's up with the boat? You done it? He's like, oh, we mastered that, it's time to move on to something else, So, and he would say, take, whatever job you're gonna do it well. And it's like a common saying, whatever, any job worth doing is worth doing well. Or they'll say, a saying, it could be that, show me someone that could complete a simple task successfully, and I'll show you someone that can complete a more challenging task successfully, right? The big things are a combination of doing little things correctly. And another thing my father would say is, don't be too big for your britches, right? It was like
Too what?
Don't be too big for your
big,
britches.
Right.
I thought it was bridges as a kid, but then I realized it's like a John Wayne type of saying or something. Like don't be so big for your boots. Don't be so cocky, don't be so arrogant. It ties into all that. So of course, if I went to school and I'm a doctor, cleaning the floors beyond me. So what are you going to live in dirt?
Right. Right.
So any job, and like I tell you and all my kids or anyone in the dojo, I'm going to give an advice to. If you want to clean toilet bowls, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But let it be because that's what you want to do, is clean toilets. Don't let it be because you didn't go to school or didn't do what you were supposed to do. Let the choice be yours. And whatever it is you choose to do it the best you can.
Right. There is, in the movie Bronx Tale, I remember watching a scene and it made me think of that all ties into this stuff. I don't remember the words verbatim, but it was something along the lines where the son is thinking about like being a gangster because he sees the gangsters in the neighborhood, and then the father keeps telling him to kind of like more like get a good job, hustle, do all those things. And he's like, the father says something like, it's easy to just pull a trigger because, that's a second, whatever it is. But it's much harder to get up every day and do what you got to do as a man and work.
Yeah, I think that's where, like Robert De Niro is telling the kid, he's like, what does he say? He says, the real tough guy is the working man.
Right.
The guy who gets up and goes to work every day.
Right.
And it's the truth.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead.
Another sensei, I'll probably quote some of these guys that have been mentors to me, but Sensei Anthony Pinto was teaching a class at the dojo, and he says, one of the guys asked, did you ever have to use these martial arts in real life, And he's like, absolutely. I'm like, oh, we can't wait to hear this story, Right. And he's like, yeah, every day. What do you mean? Yeah, every morning when that alarm clock goes off, I use my discipline and hard work to get up and go to work,
Right.
And it's true. It's the tough guy. The tough guy is the guy who gets up and goes to work every day.
Yeah. I mean, I love it because everybody's always searching for thinking that you can overanalyze and think your way through everything, and you're going to come up with this one recipe to figure everything out, or the perfect pill, and now I don't ever have to work again, and now I don't ever have to, you're so lost in the clouds with,
and when you finally got that figured out, what are you going to do?
Right.
Like, so retirement, big thing. A lot of people like, when I retire, right? Okay, it's a wonderful thing. It's a nice thing to set yourself up for. But what are you going to do when you retire?
Right.
So they say, most guys on our job, when they were talking about pensions and jobs, they're talking like most guys don't make it 3 years on the job.
Right.
3 years after retirement is kind of the average lifespan. And then I think at one time it went to 5. I guess it depends what part of the argument you were on. But that's kind of sad. Think about it. And then you realize the people that keep going on are the people that keep busy. My top mentor,
Papa San?
Papa San.
Good guess.
87 years old. Like he's retired from the military. Then he went and did a civilian job at West Point, retired from that. He's still at 87 coaching the judo team at West Point. How's that for motivation? He's strong, he's healthy. You got to keep the mind and the body, you got to keep it going. At the pace that works for you. Yeah. But, if you're just thinking like, oh, I want to come up with this magic plan so I could sit around and do nothing, that's not going to work out too well.
Yeah. Sensei Graylin also must be a common theme, maybe that military mindset, but he was saying like, retire. What do you mean retire? I do what I love. Like, that means I'm going to do it forever. Like, yeah, maybe I do it in a different place. Maybe I retired from that job, now I got a new job, or whatever it is. I don't understand like retirement. That doesn't make sense to me. I'm doing my passion. I'm going to do it till the day I die. There's tons of like research to support all that too. It's better to wear out than it is to rust out.
I love that saying.
Yeah. I mean, it's a classic one, but it's true. And then I could dive into the science of that too, but your body is literally preserving your brain. When you exercise, there's growth factors that are released. One example is BDNF. There's other ones too, but these chemicals get released in your brain. This guy, John Rady, called it like miracle grow for the brain. So when you sprinkle BDNF on a nerve cell, it's almost like it's able to now flourish and grow. It's maybe like protein powder for a muscle, if you could think about it like that.
Oh, this sounds interesting.
But you, by moving, you are releasing these chemicals that preserve your brain. And people think, oh, if I could do puzzles as I age, or and movement is more valuable for preserving the brain than, actually, let me not say more valuable, but it provides something that those things can't give. And it's preserving your brain, and which is why you see people who move well into older age, they have a healthier brain, they fight off things like dementia and all those things a lot better, So yeah.
Well, think about it. That's how the body was meant to be.
Right.
Right? I think, I don't know if it was altered states or like years ago, there was scientists were doing research. Can the brain actually function without the body?
Right.
And they were like doing these like flotation tanks and try to make the, body not play a role. And can the brain survive without it? And, unless something weird's going on we don't know about, I don't think that's proved to be the case yet.
Actually, they'll say there's some, I forgot, it's like a sea squirt or something like that. There's a point in its life, it starts with its brain, and then it stops moving, and then it like consumes its own brain because the brain's not worth it, it's not needed anymore when there's no movement. So it'll actually then, I don't know, it becomes like an algae, or I don't know what the heck it is. But so when you stop moving, there's like not a reason to have a brain.
All right, there you go.
I mean, I don't,
Right.
That's just an example, but there's something along that, But yeah, the idea of like people, and then I even see it in the world of research, right? So what's the highest place you could get in academia and education? Your PhD. What do you do with your PhD? You pick one thing and you study that one thing, and you become an expert at that one thing, and you dedicate years to studying it. And then sometimes at the end, you realize that like the research is not conclusive, or like you figured out like, and not saying that that's not worth it.
That has to be part of the process
that's
too, though.
Part of it.
I mean,
but just that idea.
But I'm glad I got you or someone else to do that part.
Right.
I'll read the studies.
Right.
I guess, again, it's great to analyze deeply into all of this, but simply put, use it or lose it, right?
Yep. Yeah. So we still need that. I'm not knocking those things, because I even do that all the time. But the idea of like searching the world for this perfect answer all the time, but sometimes what we discover, let's just take, for example, the person who's studying cancer. Really big deal, right? There's the big four things that take us out in older years: cancer, dementia, metabolic disease, and heart disease. All four of those things. So it's like we keep the problems in the world and then try to find this perfect recipe solution. But we already know the best thing you could do is a healthy lifestyle. Move. The number one thing for all three of those is movement. And it's like, if you move, you eat well, some of the simple things, like you don't always need this fancy answer, you need the hard work, You're laughing because what?
Because I'm thinking it's also people with relationships.
Right.
You're waiting for that perfect, ideal that you have in your mind. And
right. It's like we already know what makes for a healthy life, I guess for a healthy relationship too, even if you apply it there. But yet we'd rather, instead of fixing lifestyle, we'd rather keep the shitty lifestyle, stare at the cell phone, don't move, don't play, don't do any of these things. Keep the shitty lifestyle, and we'll spend our life trying to figure out the one pill that's going to save us, like later on. It just doesn't.
I'm going to give a little props to video games, and maybe it kind of touches on some of the stuff we're talking about here. So if I was to go and sit down right now at a video game that I never played, never read any rules about, have no idea what I'm doing, I could stop playing right away. And I'll get out, and then I'll figure out how I get out, and I'll make it through a path, and bing, 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 I went to the next level. So I had success, I had failure. I think one of the things that makes these video games so, I guess, appetizing is that kids could start playing right away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They simplified it instead of overcomplicating it. And
Right.
sometimes I think what we're touching on here today is that sometimes people are just overcomplicating things too much, and it comes out to me as a form of procrastination.
Yeah, and I'm not against video games either. Anytime you strategize, no matter how you do it, you
got to find a balance.
Right. But yeah, so the last little area I wanted to talk about was maybe some martial art lessons, but it still kind of ties into what we were just saying, the word empty hand. So I think there was something you said that you wanted to speak with that, but in the martial arts, the word karate versus karate do, or, there's some lessons there too, but, karate translates to empty hand, or maybe you could speak more to it. What does empty hand mean to you? Or what does karate do mean to you? Or what are some lessons that maybe we could gain from that?
So to me, karate do can almost relate to any martial art. So even though I'm doing judo, jiu-jitsu, to me, by definition, karate do, the way of the empty hand, would fit all of them perfectly, right? I mean, we could get into some history there. Before that, in Okinawa, they were referring, it meant to like China hands, because they recognized that they learned some of these, skills from the mainland of China. And then, of course, the Japanese didn't want to have anything that sounded non-Japanese, so they looking for their own name. But the founders of karate and, these legends of these times had more in mind than just fighting. And when they said the way of the empty hand, it also meant more like emptying other things. So like negative attributes of mankind, whatever it may be. It's like the balance. Mm-hmm. Too much anger, not enough anger. Whatever those balances are in life that go to the extreme, it's kind of like emptying yourself of those desires or whatever. It's kind of Zen-like. Mm-hmm. It's a Zen-like meaning, saying that, emptying yourself of these things that would lead to negativity,
The white gi is symbolic of that too, right?
Absolutely, like pure, natural. Back then, no patches,
right.
But somehow, we logo and brand name things.
Right.
It's not just the American way anymore.
Right. Which is even back to that, now you see uniforms, they're so fancy and flashy.
Oh
and
my
this, that,
goodness!
and-
Now, like some of these, it's like going to a fashion show, which is kind of what it wasn't supposed to be, but here
Right.
we are now. So,
Yeah, I think that all still ties into a lot of that stuff, that you don't need anything fancy. You don't need a fancy gi. You don't need equipment. You don't need, there's like the Musashi quote that, I don't know it to the T, but it's something like, seek nothing outside of yourself. Everything lives within you, type of thing.
can't be better said than that. Wow.
And like back to those same lessons of like, sometimes just doing the hard work, little hustle, the things you have around you, little gratitude, nothing so fancy, and get out there and just do it. And when I hear empty hands, sometimes I think of some, like, also eliminating some of those flashy things.
Absolutely. It's definitely what they were touching on. It wasn't just about fighting in self-defense anymore. Now it was becoming polishing people.
Right.
Another opportunity for a fun joke. But, polishing people, building the character of the participants. Gichi Funakoshi, karate lies not in victory or defeat, but in the perfection of one's character.
The character of the participant.
Yeah, and Jigoro Kano said something similar. It's about mutual benefit and improving the character of the participants. We spoke a lot about efficiency today, and one of the other principles of judo is minimum effort, maximum efficiency. This is judo,
Sensei Santiago, may he rest in peace. On his email, at the bottom, his signature was flow like water, strike like tsunami.
Hold it on forever. Oh, I love it, yes.
Yeah. Do you think that, flow like water, we already spoke a lot about maybe some of like the peaceful, playful side of things, but the strike like tsunami, should everybody have the ability to strike when necessary? Is that something that people should foster?
Well, teaching martial arts, I'll get some parents sometimes, they're like, I don't want my child to fight. I says, okay. And now we can take this conversation in a couple different areas. Because in one aspect, you might say everything's a fight. You might fight to get out of bed in the morning. It might be a fight for you to do your homework when you'd rather be doing something else. So it depends where you define that fight. But let's talk about fisticuffs, right? Actual fighting someone, right? So I think it would be much better for me to know how to fight and choose not to, because I know it's the better choice. It's totally different than I'm not fighting because I'm afraid, and then I have to go through life accepting and being intimidated by things and not fighting because I'm afraid to. I think those are totally different things. So yeah, be calm like water, but it's nice to have the ability to strike like a tsunami.
Yeah, I think also, whether you like it or not, your body is releasing chemicals. They actually are the VOCs, volatile organic compounds. Your body releases things into the air, or whether it's your body language, there's a communication that's happening outside of words. And I think when someone knows how to defend themselves, they are less likely to be picked on because
Absolutely.
of their presence.
That
Whereas,
aura you send off, right? That message that,
right.
you just, people are interpreting whether they're conscious of it or not, right?
Yeah. And so I think it's super important. And, martial artists, real martial artists would say, if you go your whole life with having to fight once, even that's a lot. And I agree with that too.
Oh my goodness. So Gichin Funakoshi, his book was, Karate Do, My Way of Life.
Right.
And it's an easy read. I'm reading it, and he's like, if you have to fight once in your life, that's a lot. I'm thinking, like, what the heck's he talking about? It's like once. He's like, yeah, you know, if there's fights in that bar, don't go in that bar. If there's, you know, be humble, say excuse me, say I'm sorry. And I was mixing up having to fight with I'm right and you're wrong.
Right.
Right? If I could go back and tell you a story about how I was right and you were wrong, that's a nice argument. But really, when I go back and look through the wisdom of what Gichin Funakoshi said, I look back at every one of those fights and I'm like, yeah, I didn't have to fight.
Right.
Thank God something really didn't go bad, but you know.
Yeah, I think they also know, I've said in class, when you have someone who, if you're in the military or whatever, you know the repercussions of war, you know how dangerous it could be. If you're taking it lightly, yeah, any little fist fight could escalate into something greater. So most warriors are not so quick to get into a fight because they're aware of those repercussions, potentially.
Oh my goodness, it's definitely something you learn in the martial arts. It's like, you know, who you might think is the most deadly person is not necessarily the one.
Right.
And that most quiet, unsuspecting person is the most deadly person you ever met. You know, whether it's the tone of their voice, whether it's the way they look, you know, don't judge a book by its cover. But, you know, look, sometimes, again, I like to tell stories to get my point across. That's kind of how I operate. So I'll tell a story. Two lessons tied in with the story, but they kind of go together. So it's like second grade, we moved in the middle of the school year. So it's like I'm going up to the new school and my mom actually walks me up to the classroom. As we walk in, teacher says, so what's her name? So, you know, whatever time of generation it was, you know, my hair was longer probably than the average kid, you know? And my mother goes, I beg your pardon? She's like, yeah, what's her name? She says, are you being smart?
Right.
You know damn well, that's my son. And it's a he. I was like, whoa, how's this going, you know? And she's like, well, if he wants to be in my class, he's gonna have to cut his hair. She says, he'll wear his hair however the way he damn well pleases, and I'm the mother, not you.
Right.
I was like, wow. So I guess the lesson there is, you know, stand up for what you believe is right. Right? Now I'm like, oh my goodness, now my mother leaves and I gotta be here with this teacher. That's like, cut it out for me, you know? So it was a kind of a nerve-wracking couple days. But the other thing I noticed, there's a bully in the class, you know? It's elementary school. I don't know if the kid got left back or what, but without no doubt, he's about twice my size. And I was pretty much one of the smaller kids in the class, if not the smallest. And I noticed he goes to another kid and he's like, want to meet my friend? And the kid's like, yeah, sure. And he curls up his fist and he like blasts the kid, you know? He's like, oh, yeah, crying. It's like he didn't know I was looking, but I seen it, you know? I was like, oh, I'm gonna stay away from this kid. And we're in gym. And they say, all right, everybody line up against the wall. I go over there, and he comes right next to me. I'm like, uh-oh, let's get away from this guy. So I kind of like move and go in another spot in the line. Comes back over to me. I try to be nice. I'm like, hi. He's like, yeah, hi. He says, you're the new kid, right? I says, yeah. What's your name? He says, well, you want to meet my friend? And the second he said that, with all my power, I spun, twisted my whole body, and blasted him in the stomach. And he went down into the fetal position, crying like a baby. So what's the lesson there? Sometimes talking don't always work.
Right.
You know? You can talk, you can apologize, but sometimes the thing that does resolve the conflict is a good punch in the stomach.
Right.
You know, and then from there on, I guess it led to the third lesson, like using that to like also look out for some other kids. If I seen him picking on someone else, I'd just like look and he'd look at me and
right. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a couple big things there. So,
Which it also led to the teacher being happy about that.
okay.
Finally, someone could stand up to that bully, you know?
Right.
I was now on our good side, so.
Right. Yeah, I think having that ability to be able to defend yourself helps give you this aura, like you said, that maybe you don't always have to do it. And then in maybe a very rare case, there's times where you do have to defend yourself, especially if somebody's swinging at you and your back is against the wall. You know, Papa San always said that one, kind of like the rat in the corner type of thing. And then there's the other point of, I always tie in a little bit of science piece here, but Robert Sapolsky wrote the book Behave. He says the prefrontal cortex, that most advanced front part of your brain, actually it's designed to get you to do the harder thing when it's the right thing to do. So discipline. When you say, oh, everything in life is a fight, everything in life could be a fight when anytime you have to exhibit discipline, that's a fight. That I have to do the harder thing, even though I don't want to, right? The cookie's on the table and I decide, even though I want it, I desire it, I have to fight and say no.
Which I'm wondering, where are the cookies on the table?
But in that instance, if someone is fighting and just letting their anger get the best of them in a situation where it's not the right thing to do, that's not actually practicing maybe the fight, or, because the fight is that I have the discipline to do the right thing. And in
discipline, and sometimes the understanding.
Right. And
at some point in my martial arts studies, it was brought to my attention, all anger comes from fear.
Right.
Again, I'm always looking to defy the statement, and I'm thinking about every situation. No, that's not the case. But if you look, it's kind of in nature. It's just natural instinct, right? If you fear something, you fear for your life, it's natural that your body kicks in high gear to fight or flight, right? Either way, it involves some kind of initiative to take action. And again, finding that balance and learning to control that. So it's a little bit of discipline and sometimes understanding.
Yeah. Any big martial art lessons that you felt like how did I word this here? What character building lessons in martial arts do you most value passing on? Yeah, were there any other big martial art lessons that you felt like, maybe whether it was your black belts or, or just a couple big ones, or even if it's just one, any others that you could think of?
Like one in particular thing in the martial arts it seems like everything in my life comes back. Whenever I'm making an analogy, I'm always going back to the martial arts because there's so many lessons that have been, learned through this adventure.
Right.
But I guess the biggest thing is, when you're going for your black belt, especially in the Hotekan dojo, it's like, this multi-hour long exam that you've prepared for so many years. It brings you to the understanding that you're probably capable of a lot more than you ever anticipated. It took so many steps to get there. How could have you foreseen that that's the level you could have been at that time? So, it took that journey, that path, to actually learn that lesson.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, there's one that Sensei Hassman, the other co-founder of the school, that with Papa San there, would always say, a rat with one hole is in a whole lot of trouble, right? So that's a very good lesson that, I've taken on in life, is you have to have a backup plan. So just because you said this is your plan, all right, I'm gonna start jogging 5 miles a day, and then you wake up in the morning and it's raining. What's your backup plan? Right? Oh, this is how I'm gonna make money, or this is how I'm gonna do this, or this is how I'm gonna do that. Don't think you have to be stuck in that plan. It's nice to set a goal, in the dojo every year we do our New Year's goal. I think as you get a little older, you probably have like a 5-year goal. Those goals have to be adjustable. So I always think back, a rat with one hole is in a whole lot of trouble. Simply in self-defense, if this is the only way you know how to get out of this hold and it's not working, you're screwed.
Right.
So you need a backup plan. So backup plan is good.
Right. Yeah, I like the lesson also about you're capable of more than you think. The book Endure, Alex Hutchinson, he studies pretty much, it was the whole science of like, how does your, when your brain is going to kick in and tell you to stop before your body's actually capable of stopping, or before your body needs to stop. Because the question is like, why don't people actually run till they die type of thing, like in a marathon or like going for that extreme thing. But people who are trained, that will you'll get much closer to like that run till you die thing, meaning where like your body won't shut off and panic too soon. You'll actually be able to get closer to your real limits the more you train.
Which I have a whole new level of respect for track.
Right.
I've really come to learn like how much you have to push through the pain.
Right.
And
you are capable of way more than you think, especially in the beginning. It's very much so your mind, there's messages telling you to stop, and they're panicking way sooner because they want to keep reserves.
And sometimes you're also stopping because you picked a number.
That's
right?
true.
Oh, I'm doing a set of 10, or I'm doing a set of 10 push-ups or 10 bench presses, whatever it is.
Right.
You're stopping before the point of exhaustion because you have a set number.
Right. Right.
But there's a couple other things I'd like to touch on if you find any value in this. So when you're looking for a reason to justify working out or exercise, right? So in the martial arts, it's kind of led my path at one point to become an LMT, and my interest was shiatsu, right? Instead of acupuncture, it's acupressure, finger point pressure. So in Eastern medicine, they say all illness begins with stagnation. And I'll use water as the example. Would you rather drink your water from a vibrant, flowing river or from a stagnant puddle that stinks? Right? I think it's obvious. When you go to drink some of New York's finest, what do? You run the water a little bit, right? You let the sink run a little bit, right? So what is your body? How many things are flowing in your body? Your blood, right? Your circulatory system. Just not your heart pumping out through your arteries, it's coming back through your veins, through your capillaries, feeding every part of the body. Your air. Not only does it just fill up your lungs, then it goes to every part of your body through the cells. Your nervous system. Another amazing thing that's flowing in the body, right? Impulses, electrical, chemical, traveling through your body, 120 meters per second, right? Everything's flowing. Your lymph nodes, much slower speed, but it's bringing back, it's taking the waste out of your body and bringing it back to come out your system. As it's also moving parts that you need for your immune system, your digestive system, for your body to be healthy. It needs to be like a vibrant river. And we're not getting that sitting on the couch right now, right?
Right.
You got to get up and move. So let's go. Get up and give me 10 push-ups right now.
I'll do 10 before we go for the camera.
So, right? I mean, and that's what it is. So like in acupressure, you're finding the stagnation, or acupuncture, and you're moving it. And now, is there another form of movement? In Eastern ways they talk about in the martial arts, chi. In Chinese or in Japanese, they say ki. And some people might write it off as something mythical, but there's other energy flowing through your body, however you want to interpret it, You could take all those things I mentioned and try to put it together in science, but there ain't no Frankenstein that I know about that's walking around, right? You can't, there's something missing. And I think someone might say it's the, in the Bible they say the breath of life. God blew the breath of life and brought us to, into existence. There's something missing out of all the things we mentioned. So in Eastern world, they might call it, the chi, the key. So in Star Wars, they call it the Force, There's enough people talking about this that they have an understanding of it or not, or is it just an extension of all the things we spoke about flowing already? How about the spinal cord, right? And cerebral fluids in your brain. Everything needs to be flowing to be happy. And once it stops flowing, I think the body starts to recognize we're done here, and atrophy sets in, right? So you got to get up and move.
Yeah, I agree. And it's top down, bottom up. Sometimes you have the motivation first and then you move. Sometimes moving causes the motivation. So
right, like I said, what receptors are you feeding?
Right.
You spoke about like Miracle Grow and water. What plants are you watering?
Right, right.
Whether it's the mental food, the physical food, what are you feeding yourself? Start putting in some good stuff.
Yeah.
And it'll want more.
That covers...
Because I know damn well, if I have some cookies, my body wants some more.
Right. Yeah. That covers all the questions I wanted to cover. I don't know if there's any other big hitters you had on your paper there that you wanted to touch on.
I love to quote some of these mentors of mine, these great senseis, I mentioned Tony Robbins, believe it or not. He did martial arts too, right? It's, and he even mentions and gives, recognition to that. But, what's important, And one of my mentors, Sensei Tommy Mack, right? He would say, kata, breathe, and pray.
Simple.
Keep it simple. I could do a kata in a minute, and I got my body flowing in different certain positions, moving those lymphs or that circulatory or anything I'm doing, and that tightening and release kind of creates within a minute, right? Breathe. How much of us do not fill our lungs to capacity? How many of us ever even tried to blow it out all the way, right? Expand those lungs to the fullest. And pray, look, recognize there's something greater than us. So the other great thing he said to me, is if you have your health, you have everything, If your kids are healthy, they're not on drugs and they're not in jail, you're a millionaire, son. And sometimes it's just learning to appreciate what you have and don't take anything for granted,
I think that's a good close right there. Any other big hitters?
All questions will be answered in training, Do the task for a while and give it time to formulate before we just sit around and talk all day and get nothing done. Right? It's back to the procrastination versus analyzation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think that was a big theme throughout this whole episode. Thinking is still good. I have tons of episodes dedicated to that. But this episode is the reminder of don't think too much. Get out there, do it.
Right.
Questions are answered in training. Wear out, rust out. Wearing out is better. Get in there, move. The people who overthink and have this perfect answer doesn't really separate much difference anyway. Right? The advanced training principles in weightlifting are not really much different than simple 3 sets of 10.
So in the dojo, sometimes, I'll touch on something, whether I'm touching on the science of how a nerve receptor responds through the neurological pathway to the spine. And, and I'll say, you don't need to know this for it to work. You don't need to know the science, You block and you punch this way, whether you understand how and why it works, it still works.
Right.
Right? But if you want to intellect on it and you want to go to a deeper level of understanding and that interests you, it's there for us. You know. But
Yeah.
you don't necessarily need to know all that to make it work.
And then, valuing even that intuitive process, that it's just you're feeling it and it's there. And I think we spend too much time with cafe talk. Cafe talk is still good, but at what point are you getting out and doing it? You know, what point are you, riding, fighting, this, that, whatever it is, get out and do it. Whenever I would compete, you'd always say, my favorite thing, even though it's so simple, was just stop fucking around. So stop fucking around and do it.
Right.
So I think this was a solid episode. Hopefully people got some gems from it. And good day. Peace out.
Peace out. Let's get out.
Yeah. All right, we're rolling.
Come on, the table's too weak, this, that, bunch of excuses. Stop fucking around and do the push-ups. Come on.
One. There you go.
That's good. All right.
There you go.
Yeah.